I, 28F, am a primary school teacher, which means I spend my days managing playground disputes and teaching kids about consequences. Ironic, considering I spent the last 3 years letting my mother-in-law maltreat me like a temporary tenant in my own marriage. She's a woman who views life as a curated social gallery where every piece must be perfect, and I was the budget frame she never wanted. My husband, 30M, is a kind man, but he was raised by a narcissist who used guilt like a surgical tool. Every holiday, every dinner, every decision was filtered through her approval. We've been trying for a baby for 2 years. 2 years of hormonal roller coasters and negative tests that she made infinitely worse by constantly checking in to ask if my family's genetics were the reason the family line was stalling. When the test finally showed 2 pink lines, I thought the war was over. I thought this baby would finally make her see me as family. I was dead wrong. The ordinary afternoon that turned into a massacre was a Sunday brunch 3 weeks ago. We decided to tell her privately before her massive 50th birthday gala. We walked into her white marble living room with a small gift box containing a pair of tiny knitted booties. She didn't even open the box. She looked at the ribbon, looked at me, and her face went stone cold. "Not now," she said, cutting my husband off. "I am coordinating the floral arrangements for the gala. If this is about that news you hinted at, I'm not in the mood for distractions." "Mom, it's important," my husband said, pushing the box toward her. "We're pregnant." She didn't hug us. She didn't smile. She picked up the box, walked to the trash can in the kitchen, and dropped it in like a piece of junk mail. "No, you aren't," she said, turning back with a terrifying calm. "You aren't going to announce this. My 50th is a celebration of my life and my beauty. I won't have the attention diverted to a fetus that might not even stick. You will keep your mouth shut until after the party. If you don't, I'll make sure your father cuts off the down payment assistance for the house you're looking at." This was her first act of entitlement, the stolen joy. She wasn't just asking for a favor. She was using a financial leash to choke out our happiness. "You're throwing away baby shoes?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I'm throwing away a distraction," she replied. "Now go home. You look puffy. We have a reputation to maintain." I left that house shaking, but I didn't cry. My husband was silent in the car, already defeated by the threat of losing our future home. He didn't realize that while I was sitting in the passenger seat, I was scrolling through the old tablet she had given me a month ago to help with the party planning. She had forgotten to log out of her cloud account, and that's when I found them. The photos, the hotel reservations. My MIL, the woman who preached traditional values to me like a sermon, had been having a 3-year affair with my father-in-law's business partner. I spent the next week moving with the clinical precision of a woman who had nothing left to lose. I didn't confront my husband, 30M, and I certainly didn't tell him about the digital landmine I discovered on the tablet. He was too busy trying to manage me, constantly reminding me to wear loose sweaters around his mother, so she wouldn't get triggered by any hint of a baby bump. The ordinary event that masked my real movements was the pre-gala luncheon. My email invited me to a high-end bistro to discuss my wardrobe for her 50th. She spent an hour telling the waiter about her organic diet, while pointedly looking at my water glass. "You have to understand, honey," she said, leaning across the table and lowering her voice. "This 50th birthday is my crowning achievement. Everyone who matters in this city will be watching. I won't have them whispering that my son's wife has let herself go before the ink is even dry on the guest list." She then pulled a shopping bag from under the table and slid it toward me. Inside was a high-compression waist trainer, a corset. "You'll wear this under your dress. It'll flatten that bloating. I've already told the tailor to take your gown in 2 inches. I'm 12 weeks pregnant," I said, the words feeling like shards of glass in my throat. "I'm not supposed to constrict my midsection like that. And I'm the one paying for your future house," she snapped, her eyes flashing with that terrifying entitlement. "You'll wear it for 4 hours. The fetus will be fine. My reputation, however, is fragile. Don't be selfish, dear. It's a small price to pay for $1 million mortgage." This was her second act of entitlement, the bodily autonomy tax. She truly believed she owned my health and my baby's safety because she held the purse strings. I smiled, a real genuine smile that seemed to confuse her. You're right. Reputation is everything. I'll make sure the focus is exactly where it needs to be. I spent that night in our guest room while my husband worked late, which I now knew was just him hiding from the tension. I wasn't just looking at the affair photos anymore. I was digging into the business expenses folder in her cloud. I found receipts for a boutique hotel downtown that matched the dates of her charity board meetings. More importantly, I found a series of emails between her and my father-in-law's FIL business partner. They weren't just having an affair. They were discussing a buyout strategy that would leave my FIL high and dry while they moved to a villa in Tuscany. She wasn't just cheating on her husband. She was helping his best friend dismantle his life's work. How's the slideshow coming? My husband asked, poking his head in. He thought I was just making a sweet tribute of her childhood photos. It's going to be the highlight of the evening, I said, my finger hovering over a photo of her and the business partner in a very compromising position at a conference in Miami. It's going to reveal a side of your mother no one has ever seen. The tension was a live wire. I had the thumb drive hidden in my jewelry box. I'd already coordinated with the AV technician for the gala, a 20-year-old kid who I'd tipped $500 to step away for a smoke once the tribute started. The night of the 50th birthday gala arrived, and the ballroom of the downtown hotel was a sea of gold leaf decor, white lilies, and people who spent more on their watches than I made in a year. My ML was in her element, draped in a custom emerald silk gown, gliding through the room like she owned the air everyone was breathing. I was there too. I was wearing the dress she picked out, and yes, I was wearing the corset. It was tight, dangerously tight, and every breath felt like a struggle. But I needed her to see me in it. I needed her to feel like she had won, to feel that absolute sense of control over me because it made her guard drop completely. You look acceptable, she whispered as she passed me, her hand squeezing my arm hard enough to leave a bruise. See? Was a little discomfort so hard? Now the pictures will be perfect. I wouldn't miss this for the world, I said, catching the eye of the AV technician at the back of the room. He gave me a subtle nod. The dinner was a blur of forced laughter and my FIL giving a long glowing speech about his loyal, beautiful wife and their 30 years of unwavering partnership. I looked at the business partner sitting at the head table, nodding along while he secretly adjusted his tie. The level of entitlement was staggering. They were sitting right in front of the man they were planning to bankrupt, smiling for the cameras. This was her third act of entitlement, the public deception. She wasn't just living a lie. She was performing it, expecting the world to applaud her while she dismantled her family from the inside. At 9 p.m. the lights dimmed. It was time for the tribute slideshow. My husband stood up, looking relieved that the night was almost over. And now a special look at the life of the woman who keeps this family together, he announced. I walked up to the podium. The corset was digging into my ribs, but the adrenaline was better than any painkiller. I looked at my Emil, who was preening in her seat, ready for her close-up. Tonight is about legacy. I began, my voice echoing through the silent ballroom. My mother-in-law told me that a family's reputation is built on what we choose to show the world. She taught me that some things are too precious to stay hidden. So I've put together a presentation that reflects the true depth of her commitments. I pressed the remote. The first slide was a baby photo. The second was her graduation. The room smiled. The third was her wedding. A collective went through the crowd. Then came the fourth slide. It wasn't a family photo. It was a high-resolution screenshot of a text message from her to the business partner. He's at the club until 10. Meet me at the usual suite. I'm tired of playing the perfect wife. I need to be myself tonight. The silence that hit that room was so absolute it felt like the oxygen had been sucked out of the building. My MIL's wine glass shattered on the table. I think the next few slides really capture that true self she mentioned, I said, clicking the remote again. The screen filled with photos of them in Miami. Not at a conference but at a private beach club. Then came the emails, the ones detailing the buyout strategy, the Tuscan villa plans, and the accounts where she'd been parking my FIL's money. The grand dame didn't scream. She didn't move. She turned a shade of gray that matched the silver centerpieces. My FIL stood up, his face shifting from confusion to a terrifying, quiet rage as he looked from the screen to his best friend. The ballroom was a tomb. For 5 seconds, the only sound was the low hum of the projector cooling fan. Then the chaos erupted. My father-in-law, Afel, didn't yell. He let out a guttural primal sound of betrayal. He turned toward his business partner, his brother for 30 years, and delivered a single heavy punch that sent the man sprawling over the dessert table in a spray of expensive chocolate and broken crystal. "Is this the buyout strategy, you coward?" My FL roared, his voice cracking. "Is this why the quarterly audits were delayed?" My husband, 30M, was frozen, staring at the screen where a photo of his mother in a sheer robe was still being projected for 300 of the city's elite to see. He looked at me, his eyes wide with a mix of horror and a sudden sharp realization. You did this?" he whispered. "I did what she asked," I said, my hand going to the hidden laces of the corset under my gown. I made sure the focus was exactly where it needed to be. She wanted a legacy? Well, here it is. This was her fourth act of entitlement, the victimhood pivot. Even as the world collapsed around her, Mayamel didn't apologize. She stood up, her emerald silk shimmering under the spotlight, and pointed a shaking finger at me. "She's lying!" she shrieked to the room, her voice hitting a frequency that made my ears ring. "She's a disgruntled schoolteacher who's jealous of my success. She's mentally unstable because of the pregnancy hormones. These are fakes. She's trying to extort us because we wouldn't buy her a house. She actually expected them to believe her. She thought her decades of social capital could override the literal receipts on the screen." She turned to my husband, grabbing his arm so hard she ripped his tuxedo sleeve. "Tell them, son. Tell them she's crazy. Tell them to turn it off." My husband looked at her, then at the screen, then at the father he'd spent his life trying to please. He looked at me, and for the first time in our marriage, he saw me not as a frame, but as a person. He reached over and pulled the projector plug himself, but the image was already burned into everyone's retinas. "It's over, Mom," he said, his voice flat and hollow. "I saw the dates. That conference in Miami? I was the one who drove you to the airport. I bought the flowers you sent him for his birthday, because you told me it was a business courtesy." The business partner scrambled to his feet, wiping blood and mousse from his face, and tried to bolt for the service exit. He was met by 2 off-duty officers working security for the event. Because I'd already sent the business expenses file to the district attorney's office an hour before the party, they weren't just there to stop a fight. They were there to serve a notice of asset freeze. I stepped back, finally reaching the clasp of that corset. I unhooked it through the fabric of my dress, and for the first time in 4 hours, I could actually draw a full breath. The relief was intoxicating. "I'm going to destroy you," Mayamel hissed, leaning in close as the room devolved into a shouting match. "You'll never see a dime. You'll be on the street with that brat. I'll make sure the school fires you for this indecent display." "I don't need your dimes," I said, leaning in just as close. "And as for my job, I'm the one who teaches kids about honesty. I think I just gave the best lesson of my life. Oh, and by the way, the house down payment? My father-in-law already moved it into a private trust for the baby 10 minutes ago via his phone. He was the only one I told the truth to before we got here." The legal fallout was less of a settlement and more of a scorched earth campaign. Because I had handed over the business expenses folder, the district attorney moved forward with a grand larceny and embezzlement investigation against the business partner and my mother-in-law, Mal. Since they had used company funds to finance their personal trysts and were actively conspiring to devalue the firm for a hostile takeover, my father-in-law, Fil, was able to file for avoidance of marital assets based on fraudulent intent. This was her 5th and final act of entitlement, the alimony audacity. Even after being outed as a cheater and a thief, She had the nerve to show up to the first divorce hearing in a designer black suit, demanding the lifestyle she was accustomed to. She claimed she was a victim of a coordinated character assassination, and that her contributions to the family brand entitled her to half of everything, including my FIL's private pension. "I built that man," she shrieked in the hallway of the courthouse. "I gave him 30 years. I made him respectable. He owes me the house, the cars, and the social standing." The judge didn't see a queen. He saw a defendant. Because the affair and the financial fraud were so deeply intertwined, the court ruled that she had forfeited her right to standard alimony under the equitable distribution laws of our state. The evidence of her plotting to bankrupt her own husband was the final nail in the coffin. The satisfying revenge wasn't just the legal victory. It was the quiet life that followed. My MIL ended up in a 2-bedroom rental, her social circle having vanished the moment the projector turned on. The business partner took a plea deal that involved naming her as the primary instigator of the fraud, further cementing her exile from polite society. My husband, 30M, and I spent months in therapy. He had to unlearn 30 years of narcissism and guilt, but seeing his mother's true face was the jolt he needed to finally grow up. We moved into our new home. Not the mansion she wanted to control, but a beautiful sun-drenched house with a yard big enough for a playground. I'm currently 38 weeks pregnant. My FIL is over every weekend, helping us paint the nursery and looking 10 years younger since he trimmed the fat from his life. He told me the other day that the baby's college fund is already fully vested. I realized that a perfect reputation is just a thin layer of paint on a rotting wall. Once you strip it away, you find out what the house is really made of. I'm still a teacher and I still tell my students that the truth always comes out. Sometimes it just needs a little help from a high-resolution projector. If you enjoyed watching a social queen lose her throne, her bank account, and her best friend all in one night, hit that subscribe button. I've got a neighbor who thinks her historical home status gives her the right to tell me what color my baby's stroller should be.